It's not enough to know math and reading and science. That's important and insufficient. You also need to know how to set and achieve goals, how to show up on time, how to work with other people, how to resolve conflicts, how to balance your life, right? And that's what the workforce of today demands.
Welcome to Change Starts Here, a FranklinCovey Education podcast for K-12 leaders driving meaningful change through bold thinking, real stories, and proven strategies for lasting impact. Now here's your host, Dustin Odom.
What if the reason your school feels overwhelmed and underperforming isn't a lack of effort, but a lack of focus? Today in the Change Starts Here podcast, we're tackling one of the biggest challenges facing schools: doing too much and accomplishing too little. I'm Dustin Odom, and I'm joined by someone who has helped thousands of schools across the world break through that cycle. Sean Covey, the president of FranklinCovey Education. We're unpacking why overcommitment is the enemy of impact and how to execute on what matters most without burning out. You're going to walk away with practical leadership strategies, and you'll also get a chance to know Sean a little bit more personally. The man who grew up in a home where leadership wasn't just a topic, it was a way of life. Let's dive in. Sean, it is so good to have you here. I know we've been trying to sync our schedules for the last 2 months, and I just want to thank you for making time. I know that you've been traveling a lot and you're all over the place for, doing this great work for us. And I just want to thank you for making time to be here with us today.
Dustin, it's so good to be with you. I'm glad we finally figured out a time to get together.
Question that I love to ask, and I got it from Brad Montague years ago, is just simply, who are you and what do you love about what you do?
Well, I identify with family. I'm a member of a family. I'm one of 9 kids, and I have kids of my own and a few grandkids. That's how I most identify. And I love what I do with Leader in Me. It's so meaningful. When I first saw A.B. Combs Elementary about 15 years ago, I was blown away, and it changed my life. And I set a course to try to get Leader in Me to as many kids as possible. Because when I first saw Leader in Me, I thought, this is like a wonder drug. I just found penicillin at this amazing school. These kids are so confident, so prepared for the future. And I just felt like I need to get this to as many students as possible. So our vision as a team that you're part of, Dustin, is to get this to every child in every corner. And I take that seriously. And we feel a stewardship. It's a real positive thing. It's not a negative thing. It's just like, this is exciting, and every child deserves this, because in the end, this is about unleashing the gifts and talents of everyone.
Well, you describe that as a wonder drug. I think the one thing that I've always found interesting about my conversations with you, and one of the reasons why I chose to come be on this journey with you, is that there's a humility to it, right? There's a calling for passion of like, we are going to try to get this to everybody. There's also been a humility of this is a process that is created by educators and with educators, and it's something that just empowers educators. And so you've spent a lot of time over the years, but definitely recently on the road speaking with educators. And I'm just curious, what are you hearing as the most common challenges those leaders are facing today?
The challenges are very real, and they're consistent. Just yesterday, I was in Moore, Oklahoma, the Moore Public Schools. And they, great school system. They're doing fabulous. They just started doing Leader in Me a year and a half ago. But they've got challenges like mental health, is one of the key challenges. And they said, they were talking about, I just said, I saw signs all over the place talking about mental health and suicide hotlines and that kind of thing. Tell me about that. And they just said, we had a session where we listened to the students. They were talking about all their issues. And this was one of the key issues that came up was there are a lot of kids that just don't feel good right now. They're struggling all over the place. Some of us don't. And we need to make this a focus and really help people. So, that's a huge issue across the world, mental health. And I think it's in the students, but also in the adults in the school. I think the whole experience with COVID exacerbated that. And, but people are struggling just to balance and to feel good. And I think social media for teenagers is not helping, because you live your life on a public stage. when you got so much social media in your life. So that's one key thing. Another thing is just the complexity of all the requirements, right? There's too much to do, too many priorities. I've got state priorities, I've got district priorities, I've got school priorities, I've got pressure to improve grades, I've got pressure to have more teacher engagement. I've got to help close any gaps in different subgroups. So that's difficult. Teacher turnover is another key one, right? A lot of people have forgotten why they got into education in the first place. And so keeping and maintaining your teachers and your principals, everybody, right? So these are common challenges, and they seem to have increased in scope over the last few years. And so, yeah, it's a challenging environment for sure.
I think back to when you and I first met, and I was doing district and school turnaround across the country. And one of the things that I still remember to this day, I think you were in St. Louis at a mutual friend of our school speaking. We talk about, back then I felt teachers and administrators felt very stretched thin, with no child left behind. And I feel that way again today. And I think you're describing that. And your book, Four Disciplines of Education for Educators, talks about stepping out of that whirlwind.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, can you paint a picture of what it looks like for a leader who's feeling stretched thin to step out of the whirlwind?
As a company, Dustin, you may not remember this. You joined a few years later because of your great initiative. We're so glad you're with us. But as a company, we just felt like the biggest gap that people need to solve is execution. You can have a B strategy and A execution and do really well, right? And so just getting things done, and that's the hardest thing. And so we're talking a lot about air traffic controllers in the last few weeks, but think about what air traffic controllers do, right? They've got 20 or 30 planes they're keeping track of, and some are circling, but they land one at a time, right? And it doesn't mean they forget everything else, but they learn to just focus on that one plane at that time. And we find the same principle applies to businesses and schools and districts. They've got 20 planes circling. You've got so many things to worry about. But if you can learn to focus in on maybe the one or two things that are most important and land them, it's amazing how the other planes take care of themselves. And you get out of the whirlwind of the day-to-day, right? And your day job can just crush you, and you can never, unless you step out of the whirlwind of the day job, just keeping the ship afloat and focus in on we need to improve attendance. This is the biggest issue right now. If we did that one thing, landed that one plane, oh, what a difference it would make, right? Stepping out and doing that one thing. And then maybe the next year stepping out and saying, and now it's our reading scores, right? Literacy. We've got to, if we could get our students reading, we only have 32% reading at grade level. What if we could get it to 80%? What a difference that would make, right? And landing that plane. So this was a methodology we developed over a long period of time that we used with the biggest companies in the world, like Marriott Hotels across all of North America, use the 4 disciplines of execution to learn how to increase their customer satisfaction. We find the same thing happens in schools, where schools can learn to focus in on the key thing and can get great outcomes. That's what we mean by stepping out of the whirlwind.
Well, you just said, improving attendance or reading scores. And I think schools are often judged by test scores, graduation rates, and attendance. And that's things that, attendance, I guess, is probably measured more, regularly day to day, but the other ones come later. And so I'm curious, what changes when leaders and students start paying attention to tracking their daily habits that drive those results?
Yeah, well, that's the key is once you narrow down your focus, you can then identify the daily actions that need to take place, right? And we call that act on the lead measures. And then you scoreboard it, right? You've got to have it be public, and people have got to see. They got to know whether you're winning or losing. But it all starts with the first discipline, which is called, focus on the wildly important. We call them WIGs, wildly important goals, as opposed to PIGs, which are pretty important goals. These are wildly important. The kind of goals that if you don't achieve, nothing else you achieve really matters that much, right? I always tell a story, and we have this in the book. You might have heard it before, but just about how the U.S. won the space race using this approach. And so in the 1950s, Dwight Eisenhower was the president of the United States. And he came out and he said, our goal is to lead the world in space exploration. The Soviets are ahead of us. We've got to catch up. And they came up with, NASA's 18 goals, and they were like one paragraph long, beautifully written, right? And you read them, it's just like, oh, wow, this is so beautiful. And the big goal was lead the world in space exploration. Well, how do you do that, right? How do you lead the world in space exploration? And that's kind of like schools. Get better, right? Our goal is to get better, to improve. And it's so hard to do. So nothing happened for like a decade. Then John F. Kennedy came, okay? And in 1961, he said, our goal should be to get a man to the moon and back by the end of the decade. Boom, suddenly clarity. This is how we win the space race. Man to the moon and back safely. That was important for recruiting by the end of the decade. A starting line now, a finish line by the end of the decade, right? And so anyway, that galvanized everybody. Suddenly they knew exactly what to do. We got to figure out propulsion, how to get off the ground, navigation, and life support. Those were the three things. They put disproportionate focus on those. 8 years later, in 1969, they landed on the moon. We had no business being on the moon in 1969. We did not have the technology to do it, but we did it because of that extraordinary focus. And the same thing can happen in a school, and I've seen it happen many times, where a school will. I can think of Martin Petitjean Elementary down in Louisiana, where they were really struggling with their attendance, and they just said, to the moon and back by the end of the decade. Our goal is to get to 95% attendance by the end of the year. They set that wildly important goal. They posted it. Every classroom had a goal. Every student had a goal. They were all involved in it. The principal, Kim Cummins, tells a story about a little boy named Mario who woke up and he missed the bus. His mom wouldn't take him. And he thought, I can't miss because we have an attendance goal. So he goes out and he hitchhikes. He finds, some neighbor in the neighborhood that he'd seen before. The neighbor called and said, I'm bringing in this little boy who was hitchhiking. I'm not a kidnapper. They get there. Mario, he drops off the kid, and they talk for a minute. And Principal Kim Cummins takes him aside and said, Mario, what were you doing? You shouldn't, hitchhike like that. And he said, well, our class has a goal, an attendance goal, and I couldn't blow it for my team. So I had to come. Anyway, they blew away their goal. The next year, they did the same methodology and applied it to literacy. Again, blew it away. The idea of taking one thing out of the whirlwind, right, focusing on it, narrowing down, and then you figure out what your life support, your propulsion, and your navigation is as soon as you say game on and flip that switch to say, we're going after this. Until you do that, you don't know what to put disproportionate focus on.
I hear and have seen, just like you, before I ever got here, as I admitted to you early on, I was trying to figure out how to apply just the 4 disciplines of to any school that I could work with. This is before the educator's book was written. And I think you can get some great impact there. What have you seen when school districts are combining both kind of 4DX discipline and focus and the Leader in Me process?
Yeah, well, you get a lot of balance. You get the yin and the yang of culture and achievement, right? And they go hand in glove. And so I'm thinking about, Warren County Public Schools in Kentucky. And I've been there many times. And they're a Leader in Me district where all their schools and all their students at every level, middle school, high school, elementary, pre-K, all do Leader in Me. And on one hand, they're, learning the 7 habits of highly effective people. That's a common language. It's a culture. All those aspects of Leader in Me around building self-worth, potential, giving responsibility to the students, right? Let them run the school. That is powerful, and it creates this environment where kids can excel. Then if you add to that, the 4 disciplines, this goal achievement process, right? And you're teaching the district how to set goals. What is your one plane you want to land? And then that cascades down to the school, down to the classroom, and down to the student. And with students, we always give them, have an academic goal aligned to your school goal. Okay. So it might be to, improve by, 2 grade reading levels this year, 2 reading levels this year. And that's aligned to the school literacy goal, right? And then we say have a personal goal too. And it could be learn to tie my shoes, learn my ABCs, or, one kid said, I want to run for 6,000 yards my senior year. This is a real story.
I like
And
that.
so those kids are learning goal setting, right? And it's just this powerful combination of the yin and the yang of achievement and culture. Because oftentimes people go for achievement. And if you do that without culture, it feels like a hammer. It feels like you're forcing something, right? And in Leader Me schools, the magic is we're asking the teachers to do exactly what we're asking the students to do. And we're saying it's inside out. If you want your school to change, your students to change, you need to be the change, right? You need to model the 7 habits. You need to model goal setting and how to set and achieve a goal, and just watch that cascade down to the students. And when you teach goal setting and the 7 habits while you're living it, you can do it with genuineness, right? It's authentic, it's real, and that's what culture is all about.
You said, you mentioned that you were just in Moore, Oklahoma, of all places. And I know that they, I think have over 30, 35 schools, maybe more in their district. Yeah. And they implemented this throughout the entire district all at once. I'm curious, what were your takeaways? Like, what did you see? It's only been, a year, 2 years, maybe. I'm curious what takeaways you had from just even that short amount of time they've been working with us.
But they've been doing it. They started in August of 24. So they've been doing it, like a year and a half, basically, a little over a year. And it's phenomenal, Dustin. I mean, I was blown away, and I came away thinking, wow. And I felt very humbled too, because they're the ones that took this and just ran with it. And they've done it with all 35 schools. Every school looks a little bit different. Leader Me is not a cookie cutter process. It is a set of powerful ingredients that you can spice up and cook in your own way. Every school is a little bit different. And they've done such a good job with getting the 7 habits incorporated. And what really stood out was the lighthouse teams, especially the student lighthouse teams. In one of the high schools we went to, they had a student lighthouse team of about 22 kids, from sophomore, freshmen to seniors. And they were phenomenal in terms of all the things they were doing to get this up and going inside of their schools. They're also doing the 4 disciplines of execution. They're just starting, but you see wigs everywhere and scoreboards everywhere. Student voice, a lot of tremendous stories about kids who have been struggling, that are put in a leadership role, and suddenly they just start thriving, right? Leader Me in the end is all about, seeing the greatness in every student. I remember an interview I had the other day, Dustin, with a new candidate to be a client partner for us. And she was telling me about a life-changing experience she had. And she said, it was when I was in grade school and I was put into the gifted and talented program. And I thought, wonderful for you. And what a tragedy that some people are put in gifted and talented and others aren't. And I thought that's what Leader Me is. We go to a school and we put everybody into the gifted and talented program. Really, that's what we do. That's what this is all about. That's what A.B. Combs did. You're all gifted and talented, just in different ways. You're great at music. You're funny. You're good at greeting people. You're great with AV, right? And you're good with math, and you're good with, everybody's got these gifts and talents. And it's one of the key things I've learned about I always ask my kids ask me, sometimes, what have you learned about life? And I say, everyone's smart.
It's true.
Just in different ways.
Yeah.
So I was blown away by what I saw yesterday, and they did it so fast and so beautifully done. And every school's kind of at their own pace and time, but it started with just buy-in at the top. They had a couple of tragedies in 2015. They had a tornado come through there and tear apart some of their schools, and some kids were killed. And then in 2020, just 5 years ago, they had a terrible accident where a car drove through a bunch of cross-country kids and killed about 7 kids. So they've had a few really hard things to deal with that are pretty raw, and this has helped them come together. They have all that you need to do this well. And but anyway, this is a really good district, and the Leader in Me will make them better. It'll make them stronger. It just gives a process and a methodology and a common language they can rally around.
Yeah, it's funny how you describe, like I've not heard, we've been around each other a lot over the last, 15 years, but I have not heard you describe that as a school that, every kid is seen as, every school is a gifted school. But I would tell you, people ask me, what does it mean to be a Leader in Me school, particularly a lighthouse school? And I always say, it's just this simple. If there's an educator in your life that you would tell them to go work in that building. And if there's any kid that you cared about, whether it's your kid or some other kid that you would tell them that they need to go be in that building as a student, because the way people come out of there, and again, I think we sound, I think we laugh, like you and I sound crazy when we say this, but like we've had experience after experience after experience. You've been worldwide. I've just been North America at this point. And it's just, there's a joy, a passion, and like you just named, there's an identity of every kid. It's not that they think they're a genius above all other geniuses. It's they know they have a genius that is a gift to give to the world, and they recognize other people's gifts. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, totally. Totally. We had a superintendent on the other day on a call with us, and this is in southern Georgia, and he was saying, it was just talking about how great this implementation of Leader Me has been for their district. And he said, I have an assistant superintendent that's just crazy about this. And he told a story about a young boy his behavior was so bad they were about to put him into a alternative program, right, in their district. Terrible behavior. And then they gave him, as part of Leader Me, a leadership role and responsibility. And they said, you're in charge of the bus schedule and for the lineups, where kids line up and enter the bus and where buses go. And they said, this has transformed that kid. He's out there bossing everybody around, leading everybody. And it's completely changed his behavior because it changed his identity. He always saw himself as a troubled kid. Now he sees himself as a leader, right? Look how good I am at bus logistics. And they were, just little examples like this just blow people away. But these kids have it in them. They'll rise to the occasion. You just need to give them the opportunity.
I'm curious, especially coming on the heels of a visit like you just had, is if you could put one challenge out there for every superintendent or principal that's listening, what's something they could start today or tomorrow? Like if they could do one thing, what would that be?
That's hard to pick one thing.
Well, I asked, here's why. I was trying to put you in a box, which I know we don't like, but like you're seeing, like you just came from more, right? You were in Mattoon earlier. Like you've seen so many great things recently, especially.
Yeah.
I'm curious, as you think about schools and districts that aren't, experiencing this Leader in Me 40X process, what's the challenge you would give them to just start doing with their kids so they can start feeling this kind of same culture that we're describing?
Sure. Well, I'd say it starts with paradigms and just shifting paradigms. That'd be the one thing. And if you look at the Leader in Me model, it starts with, it's all about see, do, get. What you see, what you perceive determines what you do, which results in what you get, right? And the C are the paradigms that we go in and we teach Leader in Me schools. And we have 5 core paradigms. And, everyone can be a leader, not just a few. You lead in different ways. Like leadership it comes in many different forms. Everyone has genius, not just a few. This includes the adults in the school. Change starts with me. That I stop complaining about the system and I start focusing on what I can do to get along better with the teacher next door, right? And then the idea of our job is to help students lead their own learning. We got to give up that control. You're not going to control the learning environment. You got to give it to the kids and let them run it and own their own learning. And then the 5th paradigm we teach is that educators partner with parents. And that's really important. This is a family affair. Education is a family affair. Education is partnering with parents to educate the whole child versus the school educates the academic child, right? It's a very different paradigm. And so that's where we start. And that's where I'd start if you had to do one thing is, and I have so much respect for our administrators, our principals and superintendents. I think you're the best people in the world. I really do. I think you're doing the most noble work in the world. After the work we do in our own homes with our own children and families, most noble work we're doing in the world is what we're doing in schools because we're shaping the lives of these young children in major ways. And so I admire and respect and honor all that you do. And it's sometimes we can get really bogged down in the thick of thin things and forget these paradigms. You have genius, you're a leader. If I want to change the school, I start with how I behave towards my colleague and my spouse or my friend or my teenage daughter, right? And that I'm going to help empower you to lead your own learning because you've got it in you. And I'm going to help educate all of you because you need to be college, career, and life ready. It's not enough to know math and reading and science. That's important and insufficient. You also need to know how to set and achieve goals, how to show up on time, how to work with other people, how to resolve conflicts, how to balance your life, right? And that's what the workforce of today demands. And so many of our students too often are coming with a degree but not prepared for the requirements of the workforce.
I just, before we get to our last segment that I'm calling Leader Me Unplugged with Sean Covey, um, after years and years of you working in education, what's giving you hope right now, or the most hope that you have right now? Because I've talked to you a lot lately in the last couple of months, and I feel this passion and energy and belief. And yes, that's always been there, but I feel like all of us can have cycles. So I feel this renewed conviction coming from you. And so, what is it that's giving you the most hope right now as you think about just working in education?
Well, I said this to Moore yesterday when they had all their Lighthouse team. This was a middle school. They had 25 middle school students present what they're doing in their school. And afterwards, I said to the administrators of that school and of the district, "Oh my gosh, I wish all of America could have seen what I just saw today. This is remarkable. It gives me hope for America." So there are incredible schools and incredible districts all over the place. That's what gives me hope. Well run, love their kids, safe, doing all they can and giving all they can to help these kids succeed. They're all over the place. We hear about all the bad things, right? And how bad we're doing in this or that. But there are so many good things we're doing. We need to focus more on that. And I see it also around the world. I mean, I was in Pakistan recently, and we have 500 Leader Me schools in Pakistan. I went to a massive private school in Pakistan, about 3,000 students. It was a K-12 school. They are doing Leader Me through and through. The 7 habits are everywhere. Leadership roles are everywhere. Goals are everywhere, scoreboards. And they're eating it up and loving it because these principles resonate. They're universal natural laws. They're not American. Initiative, responsibility, hard work, balance, renewal, understanding, mutual benefit. These are all human principles of effectiveness, right, that work in Pakistan, in Jakarta, in Japan, and in the United States. I have hope for these countries too. And these, every kid is as good as the next kid. We're child agnostic. We love them all. And so, yeah, I think that it's a lot to be hopeful for.
I love it. Well, before we go, I couldn't have Sean Covey on our podcast and not take a sidetrack or a side path, a little detour as you would. So I've named this segment Leader Me Unplugged, and it's just getting to know you, Sean. So I have 3 quick questions for you. One of my questions is, when you're not writing, when you're not leading, when you're not traveling, which is a big one right now, when you're not traveling, what's the one thing that instantly brings you joy?
Watching football games.
What specific football games right now?
A college football game on a Saturday afternoon or Saturday night with some good food. Yeah,
I love it.
Great. Yeah.
That's so relatable. I grew up in, as you know, Tallahassee, Florida, and in
Yeah.
the 80s and 90s, Florida State football was everything. So
Yeah.
college football Saturday was ingrained as a family tradition in our
Yeah.
house.
Totally. It's nothing better.
Uh, Question two, you grew up in a home where leadership was probably dinner table conversation, maybe, maybe not. I think all of us who weren't in the Covey house assume that like you guys had like leadership, like posters and stuff, which might be a little ridiculous as you walk in. But I'm curious, was there a funny or unexpected lesson that you picked up from your dad or your family that's still with you today?
Yeah. I mean, so the principles behind the 7 habits were being taught all the time, but we didn't know. It wasn't like, hey, kids, we're going to have a lesson now. Right. But rather it was like, I'd come home from school and I'd say, my teacher makes me so mad, I'm going to flunk algebra and it's his fault. And my dad would say, geez, Sean, and why are you being a victim? I said, if you're going to flunk algebra, it's your own fault, not your teacher's. You say, no, he's a jerk. Well, if he's such a jerk, why are you talking behind his back? Why don't you go and talk with him and tell him some things he can do to improve?
Mm.
I say, Dad, you're so weird. Why would I do that? He goes, well, I mean, you want to solve the problem, right? So things like that were always going on, right? We're trying to teach us responsibility and initiative and not talking bad about people behind their backs. And, we didn't know this would later become the 7 habits of highly effective people. But it was good because my dad was always loyal to principles. My mom was always loyal to you. So she'd say, yeah, go get, she'd let me blame other people for my problems. So it was a good balance.
That was the balance, right?
Yeah.
That's the yin and the yang in the house. Well, what's the one thing people might be surprised to learn about you? Something that, doesn't usually make it into your official bios.
Probably that I love the arts. I love plays. My mom was a professional singer. She had an outstanding voice. And so I grew up, I know you could name a Broadway play and I can sing every song from it. Including yesterday, I was in Oklahoma and we started singing, "Oh, Oklahoma, where the wind comes sweeping down the plain." Right? So my mom was really very much into the arts. And so I grew up going to plays and opera and theater. And I play the piano, play the guitar. So I love music and the arts. Yeah.
I am so glad I asked this question because I did not know I was also going to learn something today. We need to unpack that. We have a mutual friend and colleague in Christy Hill who's going to be really excited to know this so that you guys can start singing your own show tunes together. Sean, as always, thank you so much for making time. Thank you for leading with your heart and thank you for leading with conviction. It's an honor to be in this work with you. And I just appreciate your vision and your leadership.
Thank you, Dustin. So good to be with you. And it's great being your colleague. This is really important work to bring the gifts and help every student, every corner of the world unleash their gifts and talents, right? That's what we're about. So, thank you.
Appreciate
you. Have a great one.
Conversations like this show us what's possible when overwhelmed schools stop chasing every priority and start gaining ground by cutting through the noise with focused leadership. A huge thanks to Sean for sharing his practical wisdom and a few surprises with us, like his love for Broadway. I've known the man over 15 years and I still had no idea about that. If you want more on leading with clarity and focus, check out his article, Overwhelmed and Overcommitted. It's linked in the show notes. And if this episode sparks something for you, please follow, subscribe wherever you're listening or watching, and share it with a colleague who you believe is ready to lead with impact. Because real change doesn't come from doing more. It starts by focusing on what matters most. As always, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
FranklinCovey Education is a trusted partner in developing leaders from the classroom to the boardroom in over 8,000 schools in over 70 countries.